The luxury ship Serenity's Hope moved quietly through space. Inside, 5,000 passengers from 12 different alien species enjoyed their journey to Vera Station. The ship was beautiful, with wide windows showing the stars and restaurants serving food from across the galaxy. Families walked through the corridors. Business leaders discussed their next deals. Children played in the recreation areas. Ambassador Hannah Park stood by one of the large windows watching the stars. She was a human diplomat who had spent 20 years building peace between different worlds. This trip was supposed to be simple. She was going to Vera Station to sign a trade agreement. Nothing dangerous. Nothing complicated. Then the lights went red. Alarms screamed through every corridor. The ship shook as something attached to the hull. Hannah heard gunfire. She heard screaming. People ran in every direction, confused and terrified. Armed soldiers in black armor burst into the main passenger area. They were Krill, a species known for their violence. They fired their weapons into the ceiling to make everyone stop moving. A passenger who tried to run was shot down immediately. Everyone else froze. The Krill forced all the passengers into the largest cargo bay. 5,000 people pressed together, terrified. Guards stood at every exit with weapons ready. After an hour of waiting, a large Krill walked to the center of the room. His armor was decorated with symbols of death. His eyes were cold. This was Vexen, the most feared terrorist leader in the galaxy. He had destroyed colonies. He had killed thousands. Every government wanted him dead, but he always escaped. Vexen spoke into a device that made his voice echo through the entire ship and broadcast to space. His message would reach every planet in the Galactic Council. I am Vexen. This ship is now mine. These passengers are now my prisoners. The Galactic Council has 48 hours to meet my demands. I want 200 Krill prisoners released from your jails. I want 500 million credits transferred to my accounts. I want safe passage to the Outer Rim with no military ships following me. He paused and looked at the terrified crowd. If you refuse, I will kill these people. One by one, in front of cameras. The whole galaxy will watch them die. You have 48 hours. Choose wisely. To prove he was serious, Vexen pointed at 3 passengers. His soldiers dragged them to the center of the room. The victims begged for their lives. Vexen shot all 3 of them himself. The sound of gunfire echoed through the bay. Blood spread across the floor. Some passengers screamed. Others cried. Many just stared in shock. Across the galaxy, the broadcast reached every world. News stations showed the executions. Governments called emergency meetings. People watched in horror. The Galactic Council gathered within hours. Representatives from dozens of species filled the Great Chamber. Most of them argued for immediate negotiation. They said life was precious. They said paying the ransom was the only moral choice. They said they had to save the hostages. The human representative, Admiral Soman Lee, sat quietly during all these speeches. She was an older woman with gray hair and sharp eyes. She had served in Earth's military for 40 years. She had fought in 3 wars. She knew the cost of violence better than most. When it was her turn to speak, she stood slowly. The chamber became quiet. Everyone knew that humans had a reputation. They were stubborn. They were difficult. They followed their own rules even when others disagreed. Admiral Lee spoke in a clear, calm voice. Earth's government has made its decision. We will not negotiate with these terrorists. We will not pay the ransom. We will not release any prisoners. This is our policy. This has been our policy for 300 years. We will not change it now. The chamber erupted. Representatives shouted at her. They called humans heartless. They called them cold. They said humans cared more about rules than about lives. Admiral Lee waited for them to finish. Then she continued. There are 247 human citizens on that ship. They are diplomats. They are engineers. They are families with children. We know them. We love them. But we will not bargain for them. She touched a control and a screen appeared behind her. It showed statistics, numbers, graphs. 300 years ago, humans were targeted by terrorists constantly. We paid ransoms. We negotiated. We tried to save everyone. And do you know what happened? More terrorists took more hostages. They knew we would pay. It became a business. Every time we saved one person, 10 more were taken the next month. The screen changed. Then we changed our policy. We stopped negotiating. Completely, absolutely, no exceptions. For any reason, At first, terrorists tested us. They killed hostages. They tried to make us break. We did not break. We mourned our dead, but we did not break. Another graph appeared. After 20 years of this policy, something changed. Terrorists stopped taking humans. Why? Because we became unprofitable. Every terrorist group that tried to kidnap humans either got nothing or was hunted down and destroyed. The mathematics became simple. Taking humans cost more than it paid. Admiral Lee looked around the chamber. In the past 50 years, only 12 groups have tried to take human hostages. All 12 groups are now gone, destroyed. Their leaders are dead or in prison. Their organizations are bankrupt. Meanwhile, species that negotiate with terrorists have hundreds of kidnappings every year. She turned off the screen. Our people on that ship know our policy. They accepted this risk when they chose to represent humanity in space. They understand that if we pay this ransom, we guarantee that more humans will be taken tomorrow. They would rather die than create more victims. A representative from Valoria stood up, his voice shaking with anger. You would let your own people die to prove a point. That is barbaric. Admiral Lee met his eyes. No, we let our people die to save future people. We accept terrible costs today so that tomorrow terrorists will not take anyone at all. You call it barbaric. We call it the only way to actually stop terrorism instead of just feeding it. She sat down. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Half the representatives were shouting. Some agreed with the humans. Most did not. But Admiral Lee just sat quietly, her decision made. Far away on a military ship called the Resolute, Captain Ji-Ho Kim received his orders. He was to move his destroyer close to the hijacked liner but take no action. He was to maintain a defensive position. He was to prepare for a possible rescue mission, but wait for authorization. Kim was a veteran of many battles. He had commanded ships for 15 years. He understood what these orders really meant. Earth was not going to negotiate. That meant either a rescue mission or watching the hostages die. Possibly both. He called his officers to a meeting. Lieutenant Minho Choi, his special operations commander, spread out maps of the Serenity's Hope. They studied every corridor, every room, every possible entry point. The ship's design was beautiful for passengers but terrible for a rescue. Too many choke points, too many places for guards to position themselves, too many ways for hostages to be killed during an assault. The casualties will be heavy, Choi said quietly. Even if we succeed, many hostages will die. Many of our soldiers will die. Kim nodded. I know, but if we get the order, we go. Start preparing the teams. We may only get one chance. Back on the Serenity's Hope, Vexen watched the Council's broadcast. He saw Admiral Lee's speech. He heard her refusal to negotiate. He laughed. She is lying, he told his second-in-command. They all lie at first. They make speeches about principles. Then when I start killing their people, they beg to negotiate. They always do. Humans are no different. But in the cargo bay, among the terrified hostages, the human passengers did not look afraid anymore. They looked determined. They gathered in small groups and spoke quietly. They comforted each other. They prepared themselves mentally for what was coming. Ambassador Hannah Park moved among them, speaking softly. You know our policy. You know our government will not negotiate. That means two possibilities. Either Captain Kim's ship will attempt a rescue, or we will have to accept what comes. Either way, we do not break. We do not give Vexen what he wants. We are the last victims, not the first of many. A young woman with a small child started crying. I don't want to die. I don't want my daughter to die. Hannah knelt beside her. I know, I don't want that either. But if we teach these terrorists that taking human children makes us pay, then more children will be taken. Your daughter might be saved today only to see other children taken tomorrow because we showed weakness. That is the terrible choice we face. The alien hostages watched the humans with confusion. Why were they so calm? Why were they not demanding their government save them? A Vrelian merchant named Karoth approached Ambassador Park. Your government abandons you, he said. How can you accept this? Hannah looked at him steadily. They have not abandoned us. They are protecting future victims by refusing to make us valuable as hostages. They are trying to rescue us. But they will not negotiate. There is a difference. The countdown had begun. 48 hours to live or die. The galaxy watched and waited to see if humans would break their iron rule. 24 hours had passed since Vexen took control of the ship. Half the deadline was gone. The tension inside the cargo bay grew worse with every hour. Guards watched the hostages constantly. Anyone who moved too much was beaten. Anyone who spoke too loud was threatened. The alien hostages spent their time crying, praying, or pleading with the cameras. They begged their governments to pay the ransom. They recorded messages to their families. They made promises to anyone who would listen. They were desperate and terrified. The human hostages were different. They sat quietly in their section of the bay. They did not cry. They did not beg. Some of them meditated. Others exercised, doing push-ups and stretches despite the guards yelling at them to stop. Parents held their children and spoke softly to them, preparing them for what might come. Ambassador Hannah Park moved among the humans, passing whispered messages. She had found a way to communicate with a hidden emergency device. She had sent a coded signal to any nearby human ships. She had received a coded reply. Captain Kim's destroyer was close. They were preparing a rescue attempt, but the odds were terrible. Hannah gathered the adult humans together during a meal break. She spoke very quietly. Captain Kim is preparing a rescue mission, but the ship's layout makes it nearly impossible. Many of us will die even if they succeed. We need to help them. An elderly engineer named Do-Hyun Nam nodded. I have been studying the guards' patterns. I have been watching the ship's systems. If we create chaos at the right moment, it might give the rescue team an advantage. A young mother spoke up, her voice shaking. I have a 5-year-old daughter. If we fight back, she could be killed. Hannah put her hand on the woman's shoulder. I know. But if we do nothing, Vexen will start executing us anyway. And if we let him win by negotiating, then other children will be taken. Your daughter will grow up in a galaxy where kidnapping humans is profitable. We have to think beyond today. The woman closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face, but she nodded. Tell me what to do. The humans began making quiet preparations. They collected anything that could be used as a weapon. Pieces of metal, broken plastic, heavy objects. They memorized where each guard stood. They planned who would attack which guard when the moment came. They were not soldiers, but they were determined. Koroth, the Vrelian merchant, watched all of this with growing amazement. He approached Hannah during another meal break. You are planning to fight? You are unarmed civilians against trained soldiers. It is suicide. Hannah smiled sadly. Maybe, but if we do nothing, we teach Vexen that humans are easy targets. If we fight back, even if we lose, we teach him that taking humans costs blood. Every terrorist who hears this story will think twice before trying again. Koroth shook his head. Your species is insane. Perhaps, Hannah agreed. But we are also free. No one takes us without paying a price. Aboard the Resolute, Captain Ji-Ho Kim stared at the tactical display. His ship floated 3 kilometers from the Serenity's Hope. Close enough to reach it quickly, far enough to avoid suspicion. His special operations teams were ready. 150 soldiers in combat armor, carrying the best weapons humanity could build. Lieutenant Min-Ho Choi stood beside him, reviewing the assault plan one more time. We will hit them from 6 points simultaneously. Hull breaches here, here, and here. The main assault team goes for the cargo bay. 2 teams secure the engine room and bridge. 1 team handles the reactor threat. Kim studied the numbers. The computer estimated 40% casualties among his soldiers. Even worse casualties among the hostages. But doing nothing meant watching Vexen execute everyone. What about the reactor? Vexen has rigged it to explode. Choi nodded grimly. We have 1 shot. If we can capture the bridge and engineering simultaneously, we might be able to shut down the destruct sequence. If we fail, the ship explodes and everyone dies anyway. Acceptable odds? Kim asked. No, Choi admitted. But they are the only odds we have. Kim looked at his officers. Every one of them knew the risks. Every one of them had volunteered anyway. If any of you want to stand down, now is the time. No judgment. No shame, no one moved. No one spoke. They just waited for orders. Kim felt a weight in his chest. These were good people. Many of them would die. But the alternative was worse. Very well. Begin final preparations. We launch in 6 hours. On the Serenity's Hope, Vexen grew increasingly nervous. The deadline was approaching. He had expected the Galactic Council to be negotiating frantically by now. Instead, there was silence from the humans. The other species were begging him to wait, offering to negotiate on behalf of Earth. But Vexen wanted to hear from the humans themselves. He watched the news broadcasts. Analysts debated whether humans were bluffing. Some said it was impossible for any government to let its citizens die. Others pointed to human history and said they had done exactly this before. The uncertainty made Vexen angry. He decided to force the issue. He walked into the cargo bay and grabbed a human woman at random. She was middle-aged, a teacher from Earth. He dragged her to the center of the room and put his gun to her head. "I am broadcasting this to the entire galaxy," Vexen announced. "I am giving Earth one more chance. Agree to negotiate or I kill this woman right now. You have 60 seconds. The cargo bay became silent. Everyone watched. The human woman was crying, but she did not beg. She looked at the other humans and mouthed the words, "Do not break." 60 seconds passed. No response from Earth. Vexen's hands shook with rage. He looked at the woman. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer. Ambassador Hannah Park stepped forward. "Wait," Vexen turned to her. "You want to negotiate?" "No," Hannah said calmly. "But if you are going to execute a human, execute me instead. I am an ambassador. I am more valuable." "Let her go." Vexen stared at her. He pushed the teacher aside and grabbed Hannah instead. "You think you are valuable? Your government does not even respond to my threats. What makes you special?" Hannah looked him in the eyes. "Nothing makes me special. That is the point. Every human life is equal. Our government will not negotiate for me any more than for her. But I have lived a full life. She has children waiting at home. Let me be the one you kill to make your point." Vexen was fascinated by her calm. "You are not afraid." "I am terrified," Hannah admitted. "But I am more afraid of what happens if we teach people like you that taking humans is profitable. My fear does not change what must be done." Vexen lowered his weapon slightly. He was a terrorist, a murderer, but he was not stupid. Something about the humans' behavior troubled him. "Your government truly will not negotiate? Even to save you?" "Never," Hannah said firmly. "They will try to rescue us. They will hunt you down afterward. But they will never pay you. That is our way." Vexen shoved her back toward the other hostages. He needed time to think. He had built his entire career on governments that valued individual lives above all else. Governments that could be manipulated through fear. But humans seemed to work differently. They valued something else more than individual lives. They valued the principle itself. He walked back to the bridge, leaving his guards to watch the hostages. He needed a new plan. If the humans would not negotiate, he would have to make an example so terrible that even they would break. He would start executing hostages every hour. He would broadcast it all. Eventually, even humans had to have limits. But as he sat in the captain's chair, staring at his countdown timer, a small doubt crept into his mind. What if they really did not break? What if he killed everyone and still got nothing? His entire strategy depended on the enemy caring about casualties. What happened when the enemy cared about something else more? Back in the cargo bay, the humans gathered around Hannah. The teacher she had saved hugged her tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Hannah smiled gently. "Save your thanks. We are not out of this yet. But remember, all of you, whatever happens next, we do not break. We are the last victims. After us, taking humans will be too expensive. That is worth dying for." The humans nodded. Even the children seemed to understand. They were afraid, but they were ready. Across the void of space, Captain Kim checked his chronometer. 4 hours until the assault. He sent a final message to Admiral Lee on Earth. "We are ready. For those who came before. For those who come after." Admiral Lee's response was brief. "For humanity. Good luck." The 48-hour deadline passed. Vexen waited for a response from Earth. None came. He checked his communications again and again. Nothing. The silence was complete. Other species were sending desperate messages. The Valorians offered to pay the ransom themselves. The Vrelian government begged Vexen to show mercy. Trade guilds promised money. Everyone was trying to negotiate except the humans. Vexen made a galaxy-wide broadcast. His face filled screens on 1,000 worlds. "The deadline has passed. Earth has chosen death for its citizens. I will now begin executing one hostage every 10 minutes until someone shows reason. This blood is on human hands." He cut the transmission and walked toward the cargo bay. He would start with the humans. He would make this so horrible that even Earth's cold government would have to respond. But he never reached the cargo bay. 30 minutes before his deadline, the Resolute made its move. The attack was sudden and overwhelming. Small drones flew from the human destroyer and attached to the Serenity's Hope. They released electromagnetic pulses that shut down sensors and communications across the entire ship. For 60 seconds, Vexen's forces were blind. In those 60 seconds, 6 different sections of the hull exploded inward. Precise charges blew perfect holes. 150 human soldiers poured into the ship from 6 directions simultaneously. They moved with practiced efficiency, flowing through corridors like water, weapons ready. Vexen's guards never had a chance to organize. The humans were on them before they understood what was happening. Firefights erupted in every corridor. The battle was brutal and close range. Soldiers fought terrorists room by room, corner by corner. Lieutenant Minho Choi led the main assault team toward the cargo bay. They fought through 3 defensive positions. Choi's armor took multiple hits. One shot cracked his ribs. Another burned through his shoulder plate. He ignored the pain and kept moving forward. His team followed him without hesitation. In the cargo bay, the hostages heard the explosions and gunfire. Ambassador Hana Park gave the signal they had been waiting for. The human hostages rose as one and attacked their guards. They had no weapons except what they had hidden: broken metal, heavy objects, bare hands, but they attacked with desperate courage. An elderly man tackled a guard twice his size. A young mother used a metal bar to strike another guard's weapon from his hands. Do-Yun Nam, the engineer, led a group that rushed the control panel and disabled the cargo bay's locks. The guards were trained soldiers, but they were not prepared for unarmed civilians to attack. They hesitated, confused by hostages acting like fighters. That hesitation cost them. The humans pressed their advantage despite taking casualties. Blood spread across the floor. People screamed, but the humans did not stop. The alien hostages watched in shock. Then, inspired by human courage, some of them joined the fight. Koroth, the Vrelian merchant, grabbed a fallen guard's weapon and began firing at the other guards. He had spent his whole life avoiding violence, but something about the humans' example made him act. Lieutenant Choi and his team breached the cargo bay 30 seconds later. They found chaos, dead guards, wounded hostages, and humans still fighting despite their injuries. Choi's soldiers quickly secured the room and began evacuating hostages to safe areas. But the mission was not over. Vexen was still alive and he had triggered the ship's reactor destruct sequence. The entire ship would explode in less than 10 minutes. Vexen had retreated to the bridge with his elite guards. He watched his empire collapse through security cameras. His forces were being systematically destroyed. His hostages were free. Everything was falling apart. He still had one card to play. He activated the ship-wide broadcast. "Attention, human soldiers. I have armed the reactor. In 8 minutes, this ship explodes. Everyone dies. Leave now or die with your rescued hostages." Captain Kim received the message aboard the Resolute. He immediately gave orders. "All teams begin emergency evacuation. Get the hostages off that ship now." But Lieutenant Choi had a different plan. He contacted Captain Kim directly. "Sir, give me 5 minutes. I can take the bridge and stop the destruct sequence." "Negative," Kim ordered. "You do not have time. Evacuate now." Choi ignored the order. He gathered his best soldiers and ran for the bridge. Ambassador Hana Park ran after him. "I know the ship's layout. I can guide you faster." Choi wanted to refuse, but they needed every advantage. "Stay behind me. If shooting starts, you run." They reached the bridge in 3 minutes. Vexen's guards opened fire immediately. The fight was intense. Close quarters combat in narrow corridors. Choi's armor saved his life twice. One of his soldiers was not so lucky and fell with a critical wound. They breached the bridge with 4 minutes remaining. Vexen stood in the center, weapon raised. He grabbed Ambassador Park, who had been helping injured soldiers, and held his gun to her head. "Back away or she dies," Vexen shouted. Choi did not lower his weapon. "Kill her or not." "Your choice." "But I'm taking this bridge and stopping that reactor." Vexen stared at him in disbelief. "You would let her die?" "I would rather she lived," Choi said calmly. "But if she dies because I did my duty, she would understand. Now step away from the controls." Hana Park spoke then, her voice steady despite the gun at her head. "He is right, Vexen. You have already lost. You were always going to lose. You just did not know it yet." In that moment of distraction, Hana acted. She had concealed a broken metal strut in her sleeve. She drove it backward into Vexen's leg with all her strength. He screamed and his grip loosened. Choi fired instantly. His shot hit Vexen in the shoulder, spinning him away from Hana. The remaining guards surrendered. Vexen lay on the floor, bleeding but alive. 3 minutes remained on the reactor countdown. Choi ran to the controls, but they were locked with an encryption he could not break. I cannot shut it down. We need someone who knows these systems. Do-hyun Nam, the engineer who had been studying the ship for 3 days, rushed onto the bridge. He had followed Choi's team hoping to help. He took one look at the control panel and began working. His fingers flew across the interface. 2 minutes. 1 minute. 30 seconds. The countdown stopped with 14 seconds remaining. Nam sagged against the console, exhausted. It is done. The reactor is stable. Choi let out a breath he had been holding. All teams, this is Choi. The ship is secure. Repeat, the ship is secure. Begin medical operations. The rescue was complete. Medical teams flooded the ship. Hostages were treated and evacuated. The dead were recovered and honored. The wounded were rushed to medical bays. Slowly, order replaced chaos. The cost had been severe. 23 human soldiers were dead. 41 were wounded, some critically. Among the hostages, 19 humans had died during the uprising. Another 12 aliens had been killed in the crossfire. But nearly 5,000 lives had been saved. Captain Kim walked through the Serenity's Hope afterward, observing the aftermath. He saw the bodies of his soldiers being carried out with honor. He saw wounded hostages being treated. He saw children reuniting with parents. He saw the terrible price of refusing to negotiate. Lieutenant Choi found him in the cargo bay, staring at the bloodstains on the floor. Sir, we succeeded. The casualties were lower than projected. Kim nodded slowly. Tell that to the families of the 23 soldiers who will never go home. Tell that to the 19 civilians who fought with no training and no weapons because we would not negotiate for them. They knew what they were doing, Choi said quietly. They died to save future hostages. They died to make taking humans too expensive. I know, Kim said. That does not make it easier, but it makes it right. Ambassador Hannah Park approached them. She had a bandage on her arm but was otherwise unharmed. Captain Kim, thank you. You saved us, Kim shook his head. You saved yourselves. High soldiers gave you an opening, but you fought for your own freedom. That took courage. Hannah looked around at the cargo bay at the evidence of the battle. 19 dead, all of them civilians. Teachers, engineers, parents. They attacked armed soldiers with bare hands because they believed in something bigger than themselves. They will be remembered, Kim promised. Every terrorist in the galaxy will hear this story. They will know that taking humans means fighting humans. Even the civilians. Even the children. We do not go quietly. Across the galaxy, news of the rescue spread. Video footage showed the assault. Images of human civilians fighting their captors circulated everywhere. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Hostages were supposed to be helpless victims. But these humans had fought like soldiers. The debate that followed would change everything. But for now, the survivors focused on healing. The dead were honored. And Vexen, bleeding in custody, realized he had made a terrible miscalculation. He had thought humans were like everyone else. He was wrong. The rescue became the most talked about event in the galaxy. Every news station showed footage of the assault. Every government debated what it meant. The images were powerful and disturbing. Human soldiers fighting with precision. Human civilians attacking armed guards with bare hands. Bodies being carried from the ship. Wounded hostages being treated. Victory purchased with blood. Public opinion split in every direction. Some species praised the humans for their courage. Others condemned them for accepting such terrible casualties. The Valorians, who had paid ransoms for centuries, issued a formal statement calling human policy barbaric and cruel. They let their own people die to prove a point, the Valorian representative said during a council session. 19 civilians dead. 23 soldiers dead, all because they refused to negotiate. How many more must die before humans learn compassion? Other voices disagreed. The Krillian ambassador, whose own people had suffered under Vexen's terrorism, spoke in support. The humans did what we lacked the courage to do. They made terrorism unprofitable. Vexen took thousands of hostages over his career. Now he will never take another. That is worth the cost. But the most important voice came from an unexpected source. Koroth, the Vrelian merchant who had been held hostage, published a detailed analysis that changed everything. Koroth was a data analyst by profession. While recovering from his ordeal, he had spent weeks gathering statistics. He studied every terrorist incident in the past 100 years. He tracked ransom payments. He counted casualties. He measured the effectiveness of different policies. His report was 300 pages long and backed by solid mathematics. His findings were shocking. Species that negotiated with terrorists experienced an average of 42 kidnapping incidents per year. The numbers increased every year as more terrorist groups saw the profit potential. The Valorians alone had paid over 2 billion credits in ransoms in the past decade, and their kidnapping rate had increased by 300%. Humans, by contrast, had experienced only 12 terrorist incidents in 50 years. Total human casualties from all terrorist actions combined were less than the Valorians lost in a single year. The reason was simple mathematics. Terrorist groups that targeted humans either got nothing or were destroyed. The profession of kidnapping humans became financially suicidal. Koroth's conclusion spread across the galaxy like fire. Humanity's policy appears ruthless when examined in single incidents. But when viewed across decades, it is the most protective policy possible. By making humans unprofitable targets, they have achieved what we thought impossible. They have nearly eliminated the threat itself. The report went viral. Suddenly, the debate shifted. Instead of arguing about morality, governments began arguing about effectiveness. Could they adopt similar policies? Should they? The Galactic Council called a special session to discuss anti-terrorism policy. Representatives from 60 species attended. Admiral Soman Lee represented Earth. She spoke plainly. We do not judge species who choose different paths. Every culture must decide for itself how to balance individual lives against collective security. But I will tell you what we learned through centuries of hard experience. The chamber fell silent as she continued. Evil people will always exist. Terrorists will always look for targets. The question is whether you make it profitable for them to target innocents. When you negotiate, you fund their operations. You prove that kidnapping works. You guarantee more kidnappings tomorrow. We chose to bear terrible costs today so our children would not have to bear them forever. We accepted that some of our people would die so that future generations could live free from this threat. It is not easy. It is not pleasant. But it works. A representative from a small trading species asked the question many were thinking. But what about the families? What do you tell the mother whose child was killed because you refused to pay? Admiral Lee's expression softened with genuine pain. You tell her the truth. You tell her that her child died a hero, that because of her child's sacrifice, fewer children will be taken in the future. You offer no false comfort. You simply honor the cost they paid for everyone's freedom. She paused, then added, and you make sure their sacrifice was not wasted. You hunt down every terrorist. You destroy their organizations. You make it clear that taking innocents leads not to profit but to ruin. Over the following months, 17 species formally adopted no-negotiation policies modeled on the human approach. They created joint military task forces to hunt terrorists. They shared intelligence. They coordinated responses. The Koroth Accords, named after the Vrelian analyst, became the foundation for a new approach to galactic security. The effects were immediate and dramatic. Terrorist organizations across the galaxy began to collapse. Funding dried up as fewer governments paid ransoms. Military pressure increased as more species committed forces to anti-terrorism operations. The mathematics that had sustained terrorism for centuries suddenly stopped working, but not everyone was pleased. The criminal organizations saw their business model dying. The Syndicate Confederation, a coalition of the largest criminal groups, met in secret to discuss the crisis. The humans started this, their leader declared. They showed the galaxy that refusing to negotiate could work. Now others follow their example. If we do not stop this trend, we will all be out of business within a decade. They planned a demonstration, something so terrible that even humans would have to negotiate. They would attack a human colony directly. They would commit atrocities so horrific that Earth's government would have no choice but to bend. Meanwhile, Captain Jiho Kim attended memorial services for his fallen soldiers. He stood with their families and spoke about their courage. He promised that their deaths had meaning, but privately in quiet moments the weight pressed on him. His first officer, Commander Yoon Han, found him alone in the ship's chapel one night. She sat beside him without speaking for a long moment. Finally, Kim spoke. 23 soldiers. I knew all of them. I ate meals with them. I knew their families, and I sent them to their deaths. They volunteered, Han said softly. Every one of them knew the risks. Knowing the risks does not make dying easier, Kim replied. It does not make leaving families behind less painful. No, Han agreed. But it makes it meaningful. They died protecting others. They died making the galaxy safer. That is more than most people can say about their deaths. Kim nodded slowly. I know. But that knowledge does not stop me from seeing their faces at night. Good, Han said firmly. The day you stop seeing their faces is the day you should stop commanding. A leader who does not feel the cost of command is a danger to everyone. Ambassador Hannah Park faced her own challenges. She visited the families of the civilian hostages who had died in the uprising. These were not trained soldiers. They were teachers, engineers, parents. They had attacked armed guards with improvised weapons because they believed in something bigger than themselves. One widow met with her, a woman whose husband had tackled a guard to create an opening for others. She asked Hannah the hardest question. Was it worth it? Did my husband die for something real? Hannah took the woman's hands. Your husband died preventing future kidnappings. Because of him and others like him, Vexen will never take another hostage. Because of the message their courage sent, terrorists across the galaxy are reconsidering whether humans are worth targeting. Yes, it was worth it. But that does not make your loss less painful. The widow cried, and Hannah cried with her. There were no easy answers. No comfortable words. Only the hard truth that sometimes good people die to make the world safer for everyone else. Vexen survived his wounds and stood trial at the Galactic Criminal Court. The trial was broadcast across every world. During his testimony, he was asked why he had not believed the humans would follow through on their threat. His answer became famous. I have been taking hostages for 30 years. Every species negotiates. Every government bends. I thought humans were the same. I thought they would care more about individual lives than abstract principles. I was wrong. The humans are different, he continued. They are willing to suffer loss today to prevent loss tomorrow. They are willing to watch their people die rather than fund more terrorism. I did not understand this. I do now. The judges sentenced him to life in maximum security, but his words echoed through the criminal underworld. A new message spread among terrorist organizations. Stay away from humans. They do not negotiate. They do not forgive. They make every hostage situation cost more than it can possibly gain. The Syndicate Confederation heard this message. They dismissed it. They believed they could break human resolve with sufficient violence. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The galaxy had changed. The old rules no longer applied. And the criminals who refused to adapt were about to face the full weight of human determination. 6 months after the Serenity's Hope rescue, the galaxy seemed to be healing. Terrorist incidents had dropped by 60%. The Korath Accords were working. More species joined the coalition every week. Criminal organizations were collapsing under military pressure and lost revenue. The future looked brighter. Then the Syndicate Confederation struck. They chose Sebiol, a small human colony on the edge of settled space. 5,000 colonists lived there, farming and mining in peace. The colony had minimal defenses. It was the perfect target for the Syndicate's message. The attack came without warning. Syndicate ships appeared in orbit and began bombardment. They destroyed the communication array first, cutting the colony off from help. Then they landed ground forces. What happened next was calculated horror. The Syndicate did not take hostages this time. They committed atrocities designed to provoke maximum emotional response. They killed civilians and broadcast the footage. They destroyed homes. They targeted families. Their message was clear. Negotiate with us or we continue to the next colony. By the time the first rescue ships arrived, over 300 colonists were dead. The survivors were traumatized. The destruction was complete. News of the attack spread through the galaxy in hours. Images of the devastation filled every screen. The galaxy held its breath. Would humans negotiate now? The Syndicate had not taken hostages to bargain with. They had simply demonstrated what would happen to other colonies if Earth did not meet their demands. Surely humans would have to respond differently to this threat. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session. Many representatives urged Earth to negotiate. This is different from a hostage situation, they argued. You cannot rescue dead colonists. You must make a deal to protect your other colonies. Admiral Soman Lee listened to all their arguments. Then she stood and delivered Earth's response. Her voice was cold as space itself. The Syndicate Confederation has made a fatal miscalculation. They believed that by escalating violence they could force us to negotiate. They believed that threatening colonies would break our resolve where threatening hostages failed. They were wrong. She paused, and when she spoke again, her words made representatives from across the galaxy go silent. We do not negotiate with terrorists. Not when they take hostages. Not when they threaten colonies. Not when they commit atrocities. Not ever. This policy has no exceptions. This policy has no limits. But understand this, she continued. There is a vast difference between refusing to negotiate and refusing to respond. We will not give them what they want, but we will give them what they have earned. The chamber erupted in questions. Admiral Lee ignored them all. She had said everything that needed saying. Earth's position was clear. What came next would speak louder than words. Within 24 hours, humanity launched Operation Reckoning. It was the largest military mobilization in human spacefaring history. 50 warships deployed across 12 systems. Captain Ji-Ho Kim, recently promoted to admiral, commanded the fleet from the Resolute. The operation had a simple objective: complete destruction of the Syndicate Confederation. Not capture. Not negotiation. Elimination. Human intelligence agencies had spent months tracking every Syndicate base, every ship, every leader. Now they put that intelligence to use. The human fleet moved with surgical precision. They hit 12 Syndicate bases simultaneously. No warnings, no demands for surrender, just overwhelming military force applied with cold efficiency. Syndicate forces tried to fight back, but they were criminals, not soldiers. They collapsed under professional military assault. Admiral Kim coordinated the operation from the Resolute's command center. He watched tactical displays showing each engagement. Ships burning. Bases destroyed, enemy forces surrendering or dying. He felt no satisfaction, only grim determination to finish the job. Lieutenant Min-Ho Choi, now a captain leading ground forces, captured a Syndicate commander. The man begged for mercy, offering information in exchange for his life. Choi listened to his intelligence, recorded everything useful, then handed him over for trial. There would be no deals, no compromises. The operation took 3 weeks. In that time, the Syndicate Confederation ceased to exist. Every base was destroyed. Every ship was captured or destroyed. Every leader was killed in combat or arrested for trial. The organization that had terrorized the galaxy for decades was gone. Humanity made no apologies. They issued no warnings. They simply demonstrated what happened when someone attacked human civilians. The message was clear. Targeting humans did not lead to negotiation. It led to extinction. The galactic response was mixed. Some species praised the operation as necessary justice. Others condemned it as excessive violence. But every criminal organization in the galaxy understood the real message. Humans were not profitable targets. They were dangerous targets. Taking human lives meant losing everything. The Galactic Council expanded the Korath Accords to include military provisions. 23 species committed forces to a permanent anti-terrorism task force. Admiral Kim took command of this multinational fleet. His mission was simple: hunt down terrorist organizations before they could act. Terrorism did not end overnight. Evil people still existed, but the mathematics had fundamentally changed. Taking hostages no longer led to ransoms. Attacking colonies no longer led to negotiations. Both led to military destruction. Slowly, over months and years, terrorist incidents dropped to nearly zero. Ambassador Hannah Park returned to diplomatic service. She worked to rebuild Sabiel Colony and helped other species transition to the new security protocols. She carried the scars from her time as a hostage, but she channeled that experience into purpose. She became one of the galaxy's strongest advocates for the Korath Accords. Captain Min-Ho Choi became a training officer, teaching special operations soldiers from multiple species. He ensured that the lessons bought with blood were passed to the next generation. His students came from dozens of worlds, but they all learned the same core principle: never negotiate with terrorists, but always protect innocents. Korath, the Vrelian analyst who had started everything with his research, became an advisor to the Galactic Council on security matters. His transformation from frightened hostage to advocate for principled resistance inspired many. He often spoke at universities and government forums, explaining the mathematics that made human policy work. A memorial was erected outside the council chambers. The Galactic Memorial for Victims of Terrorism honored all those who had died in terrorist attacks. Among the names were the hostages from the Serenity's Hope and the colonists from Sebiol. A plaque bore words that had become the unofficial motto of the New Order. Here lie those who refuse to teach evil, that innocence has a price. Their sacrifice ensures that fewer will be taken, fewer will suffer, and fewer will have to make their choice. They stood firm so that others might never have to. Admiral Kim visited the memorial often. He stood before the names of his soldiers, remembering their faces. On one such visit, a young ensign approached him nervously. "Sir, may I ask you something?" Kim nodded. "Of course. Do you think we have really ended terrorism, or will it come back eventually?" Kim considered the question carefully. Evil will always exist. There will always be people who want to hurt others for profit or ideology. But we have changed the equation. We have made terrorism too expensive. We have shown that targeting innocence leads to ruin, not reward. He gestured to the memorial. These people died to teach that lesson. Because of them, terrorists think twice. Criminal organizations calculate costs. Most decide that easier targets exist. That is not perfection, but it is progress. The ensign nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir. I understand now." Across the galaxy, in criminal havens and outlaw stations, a new message circulated. It spread through the underworld in whispered conversations and encrypted transmissions. Every terrorist, every pirate, every criminal heard it. Stay away from humans. They do not bargain. They do not bend. They do not forget. They will hunt you to the end of space itself. Take anyone else. Just leave them alone. It was not a peace treaty. It was not a diplomatic agreement. It was something more fundamental, a warning earned in blood and proven through action. A warning that some targets were too expensive, too dangerous, too determined to ever be worth taking. Years later, a young human child asked her grandmother why no one ever tried to kidnap humans anymore. The grandmother, who had been a colonist on Sebiol during the attack, answered simply, "Because we taught them a lesson. We showed them that we would rather die than make ourselves profitable victims. We showed them that attacking us costs more than any possible gain. We did not end evil, but we made it too expensive to target us." The child thought about this. "But people died." "Yes," the grandmother agreed sadly. "Good people died so that you and others like you would be safe. They died so that criminals would learn to leave humans alone. Their sacrifice was terrible, but it was meaningful." The child was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Would you do it again? If you had to choose?" The grandmother looked at her granddaughter with love and sadness. "I hope I never have to. But yes, I would do it again. Because some principles are worth dying for, and freedom from terror is one of them." That was the lesson humanity taught the galaxy. Not through superior technology,